Todd Eccles joins us in studio today. Of course, Todd is the founder and the proprietor of Patriot Defense. First of all, welcome back.
Well, it's good to be back. I'm glad I could make it down my driveway. I thought spring was here. My wife had flowers up, and now I'm back to the snow again.
Yeah, I had a. This is how bad. It wasn't so much how heavily it was falling yesterday, but it was the drifting. So I had a meeting yesterday afternoon at the Times News. So they have a parking spot. It wasn't going to last more than half an hour. So they have a parking spot outside where you can park by the front door. And I didn't want to park beyond the front door, if you know what I mean, the way the weather was.
Right.
You can park at the front door and for half an hour. And so I parked there in the half hour spot, ran inside. Meeting didn't even last half an hour, maybe 20 minutes. Came outside, got in the car, put it into drive. It didn't want to go. Put it into reverse. It did. I had to rock it out of there, and finally got enough traction in the middle of the street. And by then I was in the opposite lane. Got out on the street, and got back in my right lane and was able to make the turn. It is just as far as winter goes.
It's like we never had the 2 weeks of 50-degree weather.
You,
It's Idaho.
you, you need to go out there and gun this weather down.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'll do. Find the source, get to the source of it.
Somewhere, Jack Frost.
Yeah,
When we get a hold of him, he's going to be sorry.
exactly.
Hey, got a couple of things I wanted to mention today. Well, first of all, for people who'd like to know more about Patriot Defense, what do you do?
I'm a handgun instructor, so I deal mostly in the enhanced concealed carry permit classes. I can put together safety classes. I can put together intermediate courses. Whatever you want to do, you can find me on Facebook under Patriot Defense. You can get a hold of me. Call me, text me. Area code 620-794-6223. I respond right away. Typically, I got a class coming up on March 4th. It's getting really full, but I can still squeeze some people in if you get a hold of me soon.
I had this I wanted to mention today. I pulled this down from the last night from the editorial page at the Wall Street Journal, and it's called Waiting for Justice Gorsuch. Now, a few years ago, the Supreme Court, which supposedly has the last say in this country in something called the Heller decision, cleared the way for people because certain cities were blocking people from owning firearms for self defense. And the court said, Second Amendment doesn't say, this is arbitrary. It says you have the right to bear arms. And,
Right.
and so, therefore, the decision shut down Detroit and Washington and some of these places. Well, the writer of this says if you want to know why millions of Republicans voted for President Trump despite their doubts, look no further than Tuesday's ruling by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals on gun rights. It was a 10-4 decision, shows how a liberal Supreme Court majority would eviscerate the Second Amendment. The Fourth Circuit is one of several appellate courts that the previous president remade over 8 years, and in a case called Colby versus Hogan. Now, Hogan is the Republican governor of that state. Good guy. I know him personally. He used to be a regular on my old radio show before he decided he wanted to run for governor. And then he was a real estate agent who they said had no chance at all. And he likes to hunt and he likes to fish and he's an outdoorsman. They said he had no chance to win election. He did. And he was going to overturn an old state law in Maryland, restrictions on what they call assault weapons. And the writer says the Fourth Circuit's judicial progressives didn't let a mere precedent stand in their political way. They concocted a new military use legal test. So, in other words, if a firearm can be used by the military, they said that's not what the founders meant, which I find to be bizarre because 1911s were used by the military from, 1911 right up until about 1985.
Right.
And a lot of people own those. So if you look at this expansively, every firearm out there could be used by the
Oh
military.
yeah. Oh,
And so this is why when it gets to the Supreme Court's going to say, we already ruled on this and shoot it down, no pun intended. But it tells us that there's still people out there who are trying to get in the way, and it's apparently going to be a never-ending battle.
oh no, it'll never quit. I mean, they're always there's going to be always groups of people out there that want our guns and they want to take away our Second Amendment rights. And we just, I think with Trump as the president, I think we got a pretty good foothold, for now. But you still can't we can't lose our foothold. We still have to remain vigilant. We still have to remain dedicated. We still have to get on there and voice our opinions, our concerns. We still need to look around at our local leaders and make sure we put in the people that represent what we believe in, especially if it's a Second Amendment, from your local leaders all the way up to national leaders. We have to. It's not just Trump's in as president now, so we're all good to go. We can just sit back and relax. We still need to stay in the fight here because they're going to keep doing stuff in the background, and if they get an inch, they're going to try to take a mile.
Hey, and you think about that too. We have in Idaho, we have a pretty good delegation that is behind, firearms ownership,
Right.
and in Wyoming, and in even Montana, which has gotten a little more purple when you talk about it politically, but still, you know, we in the Intermountain West, especially, and in the Midwest, have people who are 100%, I think, behind us for the most part. But the fact is that if you just have a couple of these states on the coast that make these decisions, and if they get a court to agree with them, it can impact the entire country.
Oh yeah, that's why we got to pay attention to what's going on. We got to understand it. You get all those people in one area, you get the courts. Bad things can happen. We just got we got to remain vigilant. It's not all smooth sailing from here on out. I mean, they had a deal where they I forget which one it was. There was a couple different things floating around. You could sign this petition, and it was to like repeal the NFA, I think is what it was. Um, and It didn't get enough signatures. It failed, so they couldn't take it. And people were like, "Why aren't people signing this?" And I think it's because people have relaxed. They've kind of just let off a little bit. Trump's in there will be good. You still have to fight for what's ours. You still have to show that you're interested in it, or the other people are just going to sneak right in and take it. This is probably when they're going to try to fight harder and harder and harder, just because they're going to, they're building something in the background. They're building part of the machine, and when it's ready for it to rise, it's going to be good to go for them.
On the other hand, we tend to think everything east of the Mississippi is like a foreign country.
It,
But
it is.
New Hampshire, it very well, and I can attest to that. New Hampshire, on the other hand, which this is bizarre because New England, 6 states there, and their neighbors, New York, are all very considered to be very liberal. But New Hampshire, which sort of sits squeezed in the middle of all of this, has that slogan on the license plate that says "Live free or die,"
Right.
and they have a it's a mixed bag. I mean, sometimes they seem to go to the right, sometimes to the left, but they have a current governor. He's his name is Sununu. His father was a prominent politician there too, as well. He last week said, and he just simply did it by repealing. I guess he could do this according to his state's constitution, the permit for concealed carry. Now, we don't have a lot of states still. We have Idaho, and I think that Texas was before us, right? Was it Texas? We have a handful of states
Yeah.
only in the country that have done it.
Wyoming.
North Dakota's considering it because they looked at what we did, and he apparently
Wyoming,
did.
Wyoming, Alaska, Idaho. I don't know about Texas.
Someone may be able to help us on that one.
Yeah, I get lost in all the news.
New Hampshire got on board because he essentially was looking at what we did.
Hmm.
And remember when a lot of people said when this happened last summer, and even the governor put a warning on it, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But he said, I'm willing to wait and see. We haven't had these wild shootouts in the streets that people were predicting. And so other states now are looking at it and saying, well, we might do the same thing.
We've talked about it before, and I think it's actually made more people become more responsible because I'm getting greater turnout at my classes. People want to know the laws. They figure everyone's going to carry in Idaho because they can now, and so there's other people out there that go, I want to carry too, but I'm going to be educated about it. And I just think it's brought to light the fact that you can carry. I went for years and years and years, but I've been carrying for a long time wherever I legally can. But I went for years and years and years, and I had a concealed carry permit. But you know what? That sounds silly, I know, but it never dawned on me. I have this concealed carry permit. I can carry a gun. You know what? I had that for to have a gun in my truck with me under the seat. I mean, that's essentially what I used it for many many years until I kind of woke up one day and went, everything's kind of going in a bad direction. This is when I was living in Kansas. I got no family, barely any friends, no family out there. I got by myself with my wife and my kids. I'm going to look into this, and I punched it into my Google machine, and lo and behold, there's people out there that carried a gun every day. So I did my research, learned the laws, got a holster, and there you go. And I think that when you say concealed carry permit, some people for a while they didn't even think about it. They just maybe I mean, I think people get that confused with what you don't have to have in Idaho, which is a permit to actually have a gun. Some people get that confused because I get that all the time. I can't have a gun because I don't have a permit. Well, that's not true. So people take for granted this concealed carry permit. But now that it was brought out into the open and it was in the news, more and more people know about it. More and more people are going, well, I can carry a gun every day. Yeah, you can. Well, I'm going to take a class now. I want to get my permit. I want to take my class. I want to learn the laws. I want to do this responsibly. and that's what you need to do. I got my business card in my hand right here, and you were talking about New Hampshire. Was it what was their state motto? You said.
Live free or die.
Yep, I got written right here on my and Bill can vouch for this. Right here on my card, it says underneath there, it says, "Live like a man determined to be free." And that's what we need to do. We need to do that every day. Even if we feel like we are as free as we can possibly be, we still need to live like a man determined to be free. Live like a people determined to be free. And we need to keep an eye on our rights, fight for them whenever we can, even if we think it's smooth sailing.
Of course, going through the course and still getting certified is a good thing because if you ever have to use that firearm in self defense, we're not just talking, people trying to point at any criminality involved in it. But if you settle that and, you're cleared, there's always going to be civil actions that could come your way. And then if you have the course behind you, that's going to be a big part of your defense.
Well, it is because, and you've taken the time to be responsible and learn the Idaho's lethal force laws, and hopefully you'll make the right decisions. I know under stress and stuff, decisions are made in split seconds, but hopefully just knowing the laws, it'll give you a chance to think about it beforehand. So if you're ever put into a position where you have to use your firearm to defend yourself, you can already have thought, ahead of time. What am I going to do? What can I do? What can't I do? You'll know that as the guy is, running out of your house through the yard down the street, you can't draw your gun and take a shot at him in the back. Okay, he's gone. He's no threat. The threat is no longer exists. He's leaving. He's exiting. But you'll understand that. You won't pull him out, shoot him in the back, and then have to explain later what happened.
We have a caller with us. It's 9:18, and we're at 20. You're on the air on Top Story, and we're talking firearms with Todd Eccles. Go ahead.
Good morning, guys. I really like my concealed carry. I have the regular concealed carry, and it helps me when I purchase a gun because having it, they already know and can check real quick on my background, and I've got all my fingerprints and everything else. But Todd, I wanted to know from you, from the topic you just brought up on defense and using your gun, what do you think about USCCA insurance?
I know what you're talking about. I've never had to use it. I know some people who are looking at getting into it. I personally don't have it. So I couldn't say if it works or it doesn't work, but they're you see them everywhere. They're backed. I would say that if you've got the money and you want to spend it on something and you want to get some kind of insurance for yourself when you carry, and you don't mind spending it, spend the money. It's not going to hurt. It can't hurt you at all. If anything, it's going to gain you some help. Obviously, I've read stories of it helping, but I don't have
Lost the
any.
caller.
Oh, I don't have any personal, personal experience with them. But it's a pretty reputable name. So if you got the money to do it, do it.
Want to thank him for the telephone call, and we've got plenty more coming up. Another 40 minutes of the show today. It's 22 right now. Todd Eccles joining us from Patriot Defense. Bill Colley as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And in fact, telephone number if you'd like to join us after the break, 736-0300, 736-0300. Joining us in studio, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. And of course, he joins us on Friday mornings. We talk firearms, and it's also an opportunity for you to chime in on all things firearms. I think that's a good phrase to use with this because we've talked about court decisions and we talk about self-defense, and I think that most people out there have some general understanding too that firearms can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. That's a good way to put that, isn't it?
Oh yeah, just like anything can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. You need to get educated on it, know how to use them, know how to put them into play if the situation calls for it. Even just looking at one, I mean, you just need to make sure it's unloaded. You need, and I can teach you that in class, obviously. You need to handle them safely, not point them at people. Keep your finger off the trigger. Treat it like it's loaded, even if it is unloaded. Just be safe with it. It's kind of off the topic a little bit. We're still on guns, but I just thought of this. I read a story earlier that on Monday up in the Boise area, some lady was almost carjacked. Did you see that story, Bill?
Mm-hmm.
And she was able to get her gun and kind of run the carjacker off. Fantastic. As I read this article, I'll touch on it. I think she dropped her daughter off or someone off somewhere, and she was driving away, and someone pulled in front of her, and she must have been driving a stick or something because she stalled the car and it died. And someone jumped out of the car that pulled in front of her, beat on her door, actually reached down and opened her door, and was demanding her purse and whatever, her keys, and she wouldn't give it to him. So this guy starts beating on her, punching her in the head and stuff, tried to drag her out of the car. She finally gives up and says, I'll give you my purse. Let me get it. And she reaches over to get her purse. She opens up the console of her car, and I don't know if it was the gun that she had that was in the picture, but it was a little purple gun. But she grabbed her gun and pointed it at the guy, and he ran off. No shots fired. She was safe. Great story, happy ending. I'm glad she's safe. There's one thing: if you're driving your car, lock your doors. Lock your doors. I lock mine all the time. I make
Yeah.
sure in fact, the newer cars, you get in there, put them in drive, 2 seconds later, your doors automatically lock. You're sitting in a 2,000-pound weapon. Now, if you could have kept your doors locked, or she could have kept her doors locked, she could have fired that thing up, started that car back up and drove off. You can even use it to aim at him if he's in your way. I mean, you just got to be, part of being prepared. She did great. She had the gun. She ran the guy off, but keep your doors locked, and it could have saved her maybe some bruises.
I'm reminded of that line from what was it, Scarface, where he says, "Me, my little friend."
That's right. That's right. It was a little. It was a little gun too. So she did good though. She ran him off, and but besides maybe being scared, she's okay.
There was a story at Yahoo News this morning about a young woman who worked at a mall, and it might have been Oklahoma, Nebraska, somewhere in the Midwest. She came out of the mall at night. It was dark out, and she walked up, and someone had wrapped a flannel shirt around one of her windshield wipers.
Yes.
And she noticed there were two men in a car running nearby. What happens is these women will get out then to remove something like this, and then the men grab them. She was wise enough. She drove to a lighted area of the parking lot, just tried to reach out the window, and when she still couldn't remove it, she drove even beyond that until she got to a safe place and then removed the shirt from the windshield wipers. So this it underscores the need for women to be ready to protect themselves in these situations because the bad guys are always coming up with new ideas on how to commit
hmm
these crimes.
Well, and she did something even better. When I read that story, I read it just like you did, but I got something different from it. She demonstrated what every gun owner should demonstrate first and foremost. You need to remember she didn't. I don't know if she had a gun. I don't think she had a weapon. But if you have a gun, that should always be your the tool of last resort. So she used what we call SA or situational awareness. She was aware that there was a vehicle, a couple cars or whatever nearby running, guys in there watching her. She heard it. She noticed it. She was aware of her surroundings. She got in her car. She looked up. She saw this shirt or whatever it was wrapped around her windshield wiper, and she saw those cars running. And she was aware enough that she didn't feel right about it. Something felt wrong. So she drove. She drove away until she got to a safe area, a more public area, and was able to stop and remove it and go that route. Now, if she would have been walking out there, texting on her phone, not paying attention, like most people, let's be honest, most people are like that, not paying attention, she would have gotten her car, she would have started it and went, "Oh my gosh, what some jokester left this wrap around my windshield wiper," and then she would have jumped out, taken it off, and bad things could have happened. She would have been totally unaware of those guys sitting there watching her, waiting for her. So she practiced situational awareness, which should go hand in hand with carrying a firearm.
And that's same idea that I remember doing a story when I was young with a sheriff's deputy where we went to a house and talked about how you prepare your home during the holidays because of burglaries and
Yep.
that happen at that time of year. And he said to me, he said, most crimes are crimes of opportunity. That's why you lock your doors. That's why, you take precautions. And he said, if you're out shopping, that's why you make sure that you look around and be aware of what's around you. And if you can, park near the lights. And there's all these little things that you can do. He even detailed this for women who are coming out of a store, and if they're worried about who's there in the middle of the night, he said you can open up your car door before you load your groceries, stand behind it, pull your card up then, and he said then you've got a natural barrier because
Yeah.
you've got the door on one side and the card on the other. So if someone even tried to attack you, then by that time that would give you an opportunity to get a firearm if you had it, or get in the car and just get
Well,
away.
and you essentially, if you got that card in between you and them, you have almost another weapon right there.
Yeah.
See someone coming at you, push that car in there or that cart toward them, ram them with that cart, jump in your car, and you're out of there. It's that simple. It's the little things. Just because we carry a gun doesn't mean we have to use it. Okay, it's there as a tool of last resort. We want to try to avoid using it because you're going to open up a whole nother can of worms if you have to use that firearm. Now, granted, if you have to use it, by all means, use it. But know that you're going to have to go to court. It could be civil court. It could be. There's all kinds of things that can happen. You don't ever want to have that happen. We can, unless you got another question, but I can actually touch on a story. People have been getting on me, going, man, you had to draw your gun. I didn't hear that complete story.
We'll get to that because we've got a short break coming
Okay.
up. We'll pick up with that just after the half hour. We're at 20 right now. Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense joining us in studio. We got to talk to as well about your next class and some of those issues
Yeah.
coming up. And we want to point out that you can hear us at News Radio 1310 KLX or online at newsradio1310.com. And sometime soon we're going to have the app for your smartphone. Now keep in mind, soon is an open-ended word.
Yeah, like my podcast.
Our guest in the studio, Todd Eccles, joins us. We talk firearms on Friday mornings on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're at 20. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story. Just a quick note, I wanted to mention our friends at Waddell & Reed right here in Twin Falls. This is an investment house that's been in business since 1937. One of the oldest firms to offer mutual funds. And not only that, Waddell & Reed owns and manages 2 mutual fund families. They'll invest money by a conservative nature, and I think it's obvious that after 80 years, you can say they know what they're doing. You don't get to be in business for 8 decades without having a good idea of what you're up to. We also wanted to mention they use a planning approach to investing with clients. They will help build proper expectations at Waddell & Reed. They build those expectations around your needs and goals. Waddell & Reed will help manage the money and take planning personally. So you were sharing a story where you actually had to, at one time, in a situation, a tense situation, reach, I guess, for your firearm. And a lot of people heard that and they wanted to know a little bit more.
Yeah, I got a couple people, friends of mine are like, "Well, we heard that. You never told us that. What? You need to finish that. Did I miss that?" I'm like, "No, I never told the full story." So I will start now. I'll just start it off saying I drew my gun. I never had to raise it. I never had to point it. That was just enough, and I'll explain why. So when I lived in Kansas, me and my daughter, oh my gosh, I can't even remember how old she was. She's 14 now. She had to be 7 or 8, maybe. I don't. My wife will straighten me out when I get home, I'm sure.
Always.
Yeah, but we decided to go fishing. And if you've ever been in Kansas, I lived in the middle of the Flint Hills. Bunch of nothing, bunch of backwoods, hills, rivers everywhere. Anyhow, we decided to go to this river, and I could park down in the riverbed where it was real muddy, and I may not get out, or I could park up on the road. And I parked up on the road, and we'd gone there 100 times before, and I was over in the ditch. Now this road dead ended at a house, or you could go down across the creek. So I didn't go to the house. Right where it branched off to the creek, I parked in the ditch. And me and my daughter went down. We had a glorious day of fishing, caught a lot of fish. Lots of trees, real wooded area. Well, we walked back up to where I parked my Tahoe, and I had it facing toward the creek, and I needed to turn it around. But anyhow, I was walking up to the Tahoe, and I noticed like a line of 4 vehicles leaving this house, and I wasn't on their property or anything like that. And they came up, and I had the Tahoe. It was kind of into the brush a little bit, and I was putting the rods in the back. And I walked around. I kept my daughter close because I just got an uneasy feeling. Okay, it was a real rundown house. I wasn't quite sure who these people were. And they rolled up on me, the first vehicle, this lady slowed way down, and she rolled her window down, and she gave me this horrible look and this evil cackly laugh. And she's like, "We've been looking for you. Where you been? We've been looking for you. Where you been?" And then she just kind of kept going. And that right there threw up warning signs that something wasn't right here. So I kind of pulled my daughter close to me, and the next vehicle pulled up, and they saw me and they stopped. So I opened the driver's side door, not knowing what was going to happen, and there's these 2 big old guys sitting in the front of this little tiny Ford Ranger, and they were big boys, and they were wearing dirty shirts and coveralls, and they looked like they were twins pretty much. They were big. I mean, they could have just smashed me in a heartbeat. And they stopped. Their windows were down. They started to get out. Meanwhile, I just all the hair standing up on my neck, back of my neck. I knew this wasn't right. Something was going to happen here. I grabbed my daughter. I'm shoving her in behind me so she can crawl over the driver's seat and get into the passenger seat. Meanwhile, they open the door. They start getting out, both of them, and they're looking right at me, not saying a word. And so as I'm doing this with my left hand, I reach over with my right hand and I put it on my gun and I start to draw my gun. And they couldn't see the gun because my door was open, but I think they saw the motion of my shoulder because as I did that, as they could see, I raised my shoulder up like I was drawing something. They stopped. They looked at each other. They turned around, looked at the people behind them, the cars behind them, and they got back into their truck. And they shut the door. Meanwhile, I'm shoving my daughter, doesn't know what's going on. I'm trying to get her over to their passenger side. And they drove back by me, almost like closed the door for me with their truck, almost ran into the door. Got my daughter in there. I jumped in there, shut the door. I laid my gun next to me. I kept it out, laid it next to me on the console, started my Tahoe, and I still had to turn around, mind you. Two more vehicles went by, and they looked like they had been using meth or something. Their faces were all sucked in and horrible looking, and they just glared at me with just evil coming out of their eyes. And I had to turn around, and I got turned around, and I was in the back of the line. They got to the highway, and they turned around and came back by me and almost ran me off the road into the mud, which I think is probably where they wanted me. And who knows what they would have done at that point. But I was able to stay on the road. They went by me back to the house. I got on the highway, and off I went. And I never did go fishing there again. I still don't know what was up with that. I do think that me just making the motion, I actually drew my firearm. They didn't see it. I didn't have to point it at them. But I think just the motion of me drawing that is what saved my life or saved me from a beating and my daughter from getting hurt. To this day, I think that's what saved me. I checked with the sheriffs, and he said they're either making meth or they had a moonshine still back there, and they wanted to know where I was at, and they were trying to run me off. So kind of a scary situation, really.
We've got more coming up with Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. Just a couple of minutes. It's 22. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense in studio with us. Bill Colley as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. And situational awareness, again, is what you're talking about. You had it with that story that you shared with us just because you don't know, but you were prepared, and yet you got a feeling, and that was something that you immediately reacted to. I had once I was at a church conference in New York City, and a friend of mine, he said I've got to run off to a meeting. He said, why don't you take my boys to lunch? So I took his two boys to lunch, and we left the restaurant, and they wanted to go check out a Halloween store they'd heard about. So we're walking up this street, and I saw a fellow pushing a bicycle. And at first I thought the way he was walking, maybe he was blind. And then I thought, blind people don't carry a bicycle around or have a bicycle. And the guy started coming toward us. And I wasn't armed, but I put a shoulder down and knocked the guy over, and he got up, grabbed his bicycle, and ran off. But I had two kids with me,
Right.
and I wanted to look out for them. And unfortunately, in some of these big cities, you'd have a problem if you were armed because they're hostile to it. But that's why sometimes it's not a bad idea. We have a telephone caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense.
Okay.
Go ahead. All right, and then maybe not. 736-0300, 736-0300, and we are talking firearms this morning. Next class is coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, my next class is actually on March 4th. It's an enhanced concealed carry permit class. It's almost full. I've been getting calls every day. I like to keep them, not real small, but a decent manageable size. So I got room for a few more people. If you guys are interested, give me a call. I know I woke up this morning. I go to bed pretty early because I get up early for my main job. And there was two or three people that actually messaged me last night about 9 o'clock, and people are saying, "Well, that's not late." And well, yeah, I'm in bed by like 7:30.
Yeah.
So you can always, don't worry about that. You can always shoot me a text. You can always message me, and when I get up at 2, I'll repay the favor, and I'll return the message or I'll return the text. No, if it's a text, I wait till you're awake, no problem. But I returned like 3 messages this morning when I got up, and I'm waiting to hear back from those folks. But give me a call. You can call me, text me. Area code 620-794-6223. You can find me on Facebook. My likes on my Facebook page are going up, and I like to see that. My Facebook page, you can find me under Patriot Defense. Go ahead and like the page. It'll keep you updated on all my classes, or the comings and goings, the flooding of the range, the building of the range, the new gun I might buy, or any question. I actually ask the people on the page questions sometimes too, because I like everyone's opinion. So interact with the page, like it, like some posts. It's great. I'll respond right away. So it's what I like to see.
We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
I have one question. I work
in a school district, and I'm just so concerned that these school districts are victim-rich environments. Is there anything on the horizon, or is anybody pushing to allow concealed carry on public schools in Idaho? I'll hang up and listen.
Okay. Public schools, K through 12 schools in the state of Idaho, it's covered by a federal blanket law that say you cannot, everyone knows the rules. You cannot conceal carry, not bring a gun onto these premises, and so be it. You can read that law. That's a federal blanket law. There's nothing on the horizon as far as a bill or anything that anyone's pushing to allow for carry on schools, but it is actually up to the individual school board. That individual school can, if they want to, they can go ahead and enlist some kind of rule, but that they have to put it in their bylaws that will allow people to conceal carry on campus. Most people don't know that, but it can be done. But you have got to discuss it with the school board, and then it's under their terms and conditions. Maybe they would require you to have the enhanced permit. I don't know. That's up to them. But they've got to approve it, and they've got to put it in their bylaws. So don't just take your gun and walk into the schools right now. You're going to get a response, and it's probably not going to be the one that you want. But there is, I believe, some schools or at least one school in Twin that has allowed it. There was another one that my kids attended that we tried and tried and tried to get them to allow it. It didn't go through, but I encourage you, if you're interested in it, maybe you can get enough people together that want it. Go to the school board, talk to them, present it to them, make them see it's good. Become active in the school board. Let them know what's going on. Let them know your concerns because, yeah, those are target-rich environments. Let's talk to our school boards, get them to change their bylaws, and maybe we can overcome this.
Schools have done a lot, and I think structural efforts to try and prevent this from happening, but still, you don't stop a guy like the teenager in Connecticut. And I've always said it: if you'd had somebody there who had been, trained, a school teacher, an
Hmm.
administrator, custodian, buildings and grounds superintendent, whoever, they could have stopped that carnage before it got a lot worse.
Well, yeah, and I always, and I know I got family who are teachers. I got friends who are teachers, and this is what I tell them. If you want me to send my kids to school and you want to, you say you're going to protect my kids like they're your own, then protect them like they're your own. Protect them like I do when they're at home, and that means with firearm. Okay, go. Maybe the teachers need to band together and do this. They need a first responder, man. Stuff goes down like that. It's going to take the law enforcement 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe to get over there. You don't know. You need that first responder. They're not expecting anyone in that school to be armed. That's why they pick those. They target those places.
I was telling you earlier off air, I was watching a documentary this week about the Irish Revolution and the Civil War they had there. Oh, it started around 100 years ago. They recruited a lot of men who would work clandestinely in the city of Dublin, and their job was to go out and shoot British spies
Hmm.
as part of their job. But a lot of these guys were family men, or one was as young as 14. These were people who they went to church every weekend, and as it turned out, a lot of the spies they had to shoot were neighbors and sometimes people they knew from church. And they detailed in one scene in this through a dramatization, I guess they call it, one scene of this documentary where uh, they had to take out a couple of guys who were considered to be spies, and when they got there, one of the gunmen froze because he suddenly panicked because he couldn't do it, and somebody else had to push him out of the way, jump forward, and actually shoot the fellow. And somebody got off a shot and wounded one of the Irishmen as well in one of these instances. If you can go through all the training you have, and the idea is you've got to be able to overcome that notion that you may have to someday use that firearm once you've trained with it.
Yes, you've got to develop what they call the defensive mindset. And when you take my enhanced concealed carry class, we'll talk about that. Um, but you've got to develop that because you need to know that if you're going to carry a firearm to defend yourself and your family, your loved ones, whoever it might be, that's fantastic. That's step number one. But if you don't have the mindset for it, you're not going to be able to do it. If you ever have to use that gun and you have to pull the trigger, you got to be okay with being able to know that if you shoot someone and they're laying on the floor in your house or outside or wherever and they're bleeding out, you've just taken a life. You've just shot someone. You've just possibly killed someone's mom, someone's dad, someone's brother, uncle, sister, whoever it may be. They were family to someone, but you need to be okay with that. So there's not all women, but there's a lot of women out there who carry and they say, well, I could never, if my kids are there, I could defend my life. I could defend their life because I could do it. They're my kids. I'd do anything for my kids. But if my kids aren't there, I'm not going to carry a gun because I don't know if I could actually take someone's life. Well, you need to be able to protect yourself because if someone hurts you, they're actually harming your kids, your husband, your family. They're taking you away from you. You've got to develop that mindset and do whatever you can to come back home safely. You've got to have that mindset. You need to be able to use that if you need to do it. You need to make that decision now.
We have another caller joining us. It's coming up on 9:52. We're talking firearms with Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 1310.com. And we're at 23. Caller, you're up next.
Good morning. When I took my enhanced concealed carry permit, one of the first things the instructor told us is that if you don't have the mindset to do this, you have no business attempting it. And he said the first thing that happens when you pull that trigger is your whole life changes. And it is an awesome responsibility that has to be taken to heart.
I agree with that 100%. You've got to be prepared. You've got to be able to use it. You've got to take it to heart because it is a heck of a responsibility, and you've got to know now that you can do it.
You know, it's a little bit like people who are at war. You're expected that you're going to have to do it. And when I remember watching the movie Band of Brothers, there's a scene where Major Winters attacks a German position, and fellow turns around, looks at him, and it's just they were putting boys in uniform at that point,
Hmm.
and and the boy turns around, looks at him, and smiles, and he has to shoot and kill him, and he does it. Later, when he's on leave in Paris, he just keeps having flashbacks to it, and it disturbs him to no end. And that's the thing, is that when you do it, you're going to be living with that the rest of your life.
Yeah, so you need to take the steps now to know that you've practiced situational awareness, that you've taken all the steps you need to do to know that that's a tool of last resort. You didn't just pull that gun out and thought, well, this guy's right here, I'm going to shoot him and be done with it. That's not the way it works. I mean, granted, it may escalate to that point like right away, but you know, in my house, when I lived in Kansas, I had a great house. All the bedrooms were upstairs. So our goal was if someone kicked in my front door at 2 o'clock in the morning, they could have my TV. They could have anything they wanted down there. I didn't care. My goal was I was going to leave my wife in the bedroom. She'd be armed. She'd be on the phone. I was going to go down the hallway because we were upstairs, grab all the kids, take them down to one bedroom so I knew where everyone was at. And was I going to go downstairs and run this guy off? No, I was not going to go downstairs and try to clear my house. We were going to be on the phone to law enforcement. I'm upstairs. I got all the kids up there. I've got a firearm. I may be going to yell down the stairs. The police are coming. Leave. Go away. Don't come up. I have a gun. I'm willing to use it. And then as soon as someone cleared the top of those stairs, it was game on at that point. That's the way. I'm not saying that's the way everyone needs to do stuff. That's the way I was going to do it because I don't want to have to take a life. I don't want to have to shoot anybody. And I know that my TV and my stuff can be replaced. It's my wife and my kids that I can't replace. So I would do whatever I needed to protect my family. I'm not going to do the same for my TV. So I'm not taking this lightly. That's what I was prepared to protect, and I'll do that same thing in public with people, that kind of thing. But I made that mental note. Your life is just going to change. You carry that with you everywhere. You've got to be okay with that to a certain extent. And my line is my family. If they mess with my family, it's game on.
Want to mention quickly, we got about 3 minutes to go. First podcast is done, right?
Yes, it's about 20 minutes long, and you get to hear me ramble. And yeah,
I do it every day. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up my phone here. I need should have jot these notes down really quick, but yeah, I'm on SoundCloud. You can actually download that app, or you can find that on the computer as well. I'm under Patriot Defense. You'll see my logo. It pops up. That is my picture. I worked hard to get that picture up there, and I'm not changing it for nothing. Um, and you can go find me on iTunes as well. I got one episode up. Find it, subscribe to it. Hopefully, if everything's working right, as soon as I do another one, hopefully this weekend, because it looks like I may be snowed in.
Yeah.
I'll get another one out this weekend that it'll automatically show up on iTunes and into your feed. You can actually go to my website, which is patriotdefense13.com. You can go to there, click on the tab that says podcast, and you can listen to it. I figured out how to get a little podcast player up there. You can listen to it right there as well. And then I always post these things to Facebook. I'm constantly posting stuff on Facebook, so you can go to the Facebook page and find it as well.
I think that people who follow what you're doing and follow the show, whether it be your show on the podcast or here, realize that ultimately, as you pointed out, you never really want to use it, but the idea is that it's going to give you some peace of mind. And perhaps the bad guys, if they know that more and more people out there are trained and armed, will less likely be bad guys.
Right, and right, they don't know who's carrying a gun, and they're it's more risky to them, and they're not going to bother you as much. There's you started talking about if you carry it, and that got me. My mind kind of wanders a little bit, but it got me thinking of a quote, and I forgot the guy's name. Clint. Oh, anyhow, that's bad because I'm going to get called out, and I should know that name. But he has a quote, and it says a gun should be comforting, not comfortable. So if you're going to pack, it's kind of goes backwards a little bit. If you're going to carry, you're going to know it's there. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. You don't want to not feel it because you want to bear that weight of responsibility. You want to feel that responsibility that you have tucked in that holster somewhere. But it should be comforting, not comfortable. So you should be able to wear your firearm knowing that if something greets you and escalates to a certain point, you have the means and hopefully the knowledge to deal with it and to take care and protect your family. I feel like my family, I'm sure everyone feels like this, but I feel like my wife and kids are given to me as a gift. And as a husband, as a father, as a dad, I have to raise them and protect them the best way I know how. And this is, in my eyes, the best way I can do it.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Yep, I'll be back hopefully this Friday.
The weeks, they pass fast too. Faster as you grow older. It's like going downhill on a bicycle without brakes. But that's a story for another day. I want to thank Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. Rush Limbaugh's program is coming up next in just a few minutes, following news at 10 o'clock from Fox. Also at 1 o'clock this afternoon, Sean Hannity's program. Glenn Beck at 4. Dave Ramsey tonight from 7 until 10. And Bill Colley saying, I hope to be back here, God willing, at the Creek Rise on Monday morning between 8 and 10 o'clock.